It's been 11 months since the incident, and I still get scared when I hear loud noises and sudden movements. My name is Theresa, and this is the story of how my husband sold me to his boss for a contract. Derek had always been my Prince Charming, that's what my mother used to call him. We'd been married for 6 years, and not once had I questioned his love for me. He worked as a senior portfolio manager at Blackstone and Associates, one of the most prestigious investment firms in the city. Despite managing multi-million-dollar portfolios and working 60-hour weeks, he always made time for me, for our family, for our home. Every evening, Derek would walk through our front door with that same warm smile, loosening his tie as he called out, "Honey, I'm home." He'd find me in the kitchen or living room, wrap his arms around me from behind, and kiss my neck while asking about my day. We'd cook dinner together, talk about everything and nothing, and fall asleep in each other's arms every single night. That all changed on a Tuesday in March. Derek came home looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. His usually pristine appearance was disheveled, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, and his hands were trembling as he fumbled with his keys. But it was his eyes that terrified me most. They held a horror I'd never seen before, like he'd witnessed something unspeakable. "Derek, what's wrong?" I asked, rushing to him as he leaned heavily against the door. He looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw my husband as a broken man. Then he smiled, that fake, practiced smile he used with difficult clients. "Just stress. Very tough day at the office." He kissed my forehead and pulled me into a hug, but his embrace felt desperate, like he was clinging to something he knew he was about to lose. I wasn't convinced, but I didn't want to push. Derek had always been private about work stress, saying he didn't want to burden me with corporate politics and pressure. I respected that boundary, even though something deep in my gut told me this was different. The changes started immediately. Derek, who had always been passionate and affectionate, suddenly couldn't bear to touch me. Our nightly cuddles stopped. He'd come to bed hours after me, and some nights, I'd wake up to find him sleeping on the living room couch, as far from our bedroom as possible. At first, I gave him space. I told myself he was going through a rough patch at work, that he'd come back to me when he was ready. But days turned into weeks, and weeks stretched into months. I grew tired of being the patient wife, the understanding partner, while something was clearly eating my husband alive. I tried everything I could think of. I bought new lingerie, cooked his favorite meals, planned romantic evenings. I suggested weekend getaways, couples massages, anything to reconnect with the man I'd fallen in love with. Nothing worked. Derek remained polite but distant, like I was a roommate he was fond of rather than the woman he'd promised to love forever. The breaking point came on a Friday night in June. I'd spent the entire day preparing a special dinner, filet mignon, his favorite wine, candles, the works. I'd gotten my hair done and bought a new dress. When Derek walked through the door, I was waiting for him with a glass of wine and my biggest smile. "What's all this?" he asked, but his tone wasn't pleased. It was almost annoyed. "I thought we could have a nice evening together," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "We haven't really talked in months, and I miss you." Derek set down his briefcase and looked at me for a long moment. "Theresa, I appreciate the effort, but I'm really not in the mood for this right now." "Not in the mood for what?" "For your wife? For our marriage?" The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Derek's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might finally open up, finally tell me what was wrong. "I can't do this tonight," he said instead, grabbing his laptop bag. "I have work to catch up on." "No." The word came out stronger than I felt. "No, Derek. You can't keep doing this. You can't keep shutting me out and pretending everything is fine when it clearly isn't. I'm your wife, and I deserve to know what's going on." Derek stopped at the bottom of the stairs, his back still to me. His shoulders were rigid, and I could see the tension in every line of his body. "You want to know what's going on?" He turned around, and the look in his eyes made me take a step back. "I'm trying to save our future, Theresa. I'm trying to make sure we don't lose everything we've worked for. What are you talking about? The Pemberton account. It's worth $50 million, and if I don't close it, they're going to let me go. Do you understand what that means? It means no more house, no more comfortable life, no more security. I'd heard about the Pemberton account, a massive investment portfolio that would make Derek's career if he could land it. But I didn't understand why that meant he couldn't touch his own wife. Derek, we'll figure it out. Whatever happens, we'll get through it together. That's what marriage means. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Together? What do you contribute to this family, Theresa? You don't work, you don't bring in any income. You have no idea what kind of pressure I'm under. His words hit me like a physical blow. I'd given up my career as a graphic designer when we got married because Derek had wanted me to focus on our home, our future family. He'd insisted that my job wasn't necessary, that he could provide for both of us. That's not fair, I whispered. Life isn't fair, Theresa. Derek's voice was cold, harder than I'd ever heard it. But maybe there's a way you can help me for once. Maybe you can actually be useful. The cruelty in his words took my breath away. This wasn't the man I'd married. This wasn't the man who used to tell me I was his whole world. What do you mean? Derek looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something calculating in his expression. Come to my office tomorrow evening. Around 7. Everyone will be gone by then. Why? Because I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to explain exactly what's been going on, and exactly how you can help me. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was almost gentle. Wear something sexy. Something that shows off how beautiful you are. Despite everything, my heart leaped. Maybe this was it. Maybe Derek was finally ready to let me in, to let me help him carry whatever burden he'd been shouldering alone. Maybe the suggestion to dress up meant he was ready to reconnect with me, to remember what we meant to each other. Okay, I said, hope creeping into my voice. I'll be there. Derek nodded and headed upstairs. I stood alone in our dining room, surrounded by the romantic dinner I'd prepared, and allowed myself to believe that tomorrow would be the beginning of getting my husband back. I spent the entire next day getting ready. I went to the salon for a blowout, had my nails done, and carefully selected the perfect outfit, a black off-the-shoulder dress that hugged my curves in all the right places. It was elegant and sophisticated, but undeniably sexy. I thought maybe Derek wanted to take me out to dinner from his office, maybe to apologize for the way he'd been treating me. I arrived at Blackstone and Associates at 7:15, the building mostly empty except for security and a few workaholics burning the midnight oil. The lobby was dimly lit, all marble and glass and expensive artwork that screamed success. I called Derek from the lobby, my heels clicking against the polished floor. I'm here, I said when he answered. I'll be right down. Within minutes, Derek appeared at the elevator, and my heart sank. He looked sweaty and disheveled, his hair messy and his shirt wrinkled. When he saw me, he barely glanced at my dress, the dress I'd chosen specifically for him. You look nice, he said absently, giving me a brief side hug that felt more like a business greeting than an embrace from my husband. We rode the elevator to the 32nd floor in silence. I kept stealing glances at Derek, trying to read his expression, but his face was a mask. When the doors opened, he led me down the hallway, but we walked past his office. Where are we going? I asked. Bob's office. I want to introduce you properly. Bob Carlyle was Derek's boss, the senior vice president who'd been with the firm for over 20 years. I'd met him briefly at the company Christmas party, and the encounter had left me deeply uncomfortable. Bob was a large man in his 50s with thinning hair and small beady eyes that seemed to undress every woman he looked at. When we'd shaken hands, he'd held mine too long, and when Derek had stepped away for a moment, Bob had made a comment about how lucky Derek was to have such a beautiful, accommodating wife. I've already met Bob, I said, confusion creeping into my voice. Why do you want to introduce us again? Derek stopped outside Bob's office door, his hand on the handle. He turned to look at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. It was the look of a man who'd already made a decision he couldn't take back. Theresa, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What I'm about to ask you to do, it's not easy for me. But I need you to be a team player here. I need you to help me secure this contract. I don't understand. You don't contribute much to this family, Derek said, his voice taking on that cold, unfamiliar tone from the night before. Try to be useful just this once. The words hit me like ice water. I stared at my husband, trying to process what he was saying, trying to understand why he'd asked me to come to his office in a sexy dress to meet with his boss. And then, slowly but surely, the horrible truth began to dawn on me. Derek, what are you asking me to do? But he was already opening the door, already stepping aside to let me into Bob's office. The space was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and a huge wooden desk that dominated the center of the room. Bob was sitting behind it, and when he saw me, his face lit up with a predatory smile. Theresa, how lovely to see you again, Bob said, standing up and walking around his desk. Derek has told me so much about you. Derek and Bob exchanged a brief glance, and I saw Derek nod slightly. It was subtle, but I caught it, a signal, an acknowledgement of some prior arrangement. I'll leave you two to get acquainted, Derek said, and before I could respond, he was walking out of the office, closing the door behind him. I stood frozen in the center of the room, my mind racing to catch up with what was happening. Bob walked toward me, his smile never wavering. You know, Theresa, your husband is a very smart man. He understands that sometimes, in business, we have to make sacrifices for the greater good. He's told me how much you want to help him succeed. Bob was close now, close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the hunger in his eyes. He reached out and put his hand on my shoulder, his thumb stroking the exposed skin near my collarbone. You're doing the right thing, helping your husband like this. The Pemberton account is very important to Derek's future with this company. His other hand moved to my waist, and suddenly I understood with crystal clarity what my husband had arranged. The sexy dress, the after-hours meeting, the way Bob was touching me. Derek had made a deal with his boss to have me for the night in exchange for the $50 million contract. Get your hands off me, I said, my voice shaking with rage and disbelief. Bob's smile widened. Now, Theresa. Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be. Derek assured me you'd be cooperative. I slapped his hand away and moved toward the door, but Bob was faster than I expected. His thick hands grabbed my arms and threw me backward onto his massive wooden desk. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and as I struggled to get up, I heard the sound of fabric tearing. Please, I gasped, trying to push him away. Please don't do this. But Bob was stronger than me, and the more I fought, the more aggressive he became. My beautiful black dress, the dress I'd worn for my husband, was being ripped apart by the hands of the man Derek had sold me to. I screamed, but the office was soundproof, and everyone had gone home hours ago. I was completely alone with this monster, betrayed by the man I'd trusted with my life. Just as I felt all hope slipping away, the office door burst open. A security guard rushed in, his face a mask of determination and fury. He grabbed Bob and threw him off me with surprising strength. Get away from her, the guard shouted, his voice echoing through the office. Through my tears, I couldn't see clearly, but I felt the guard's jacket being draped over my shoulders, covering my torn dress. He was gentle, his voice soothing as he helped me sit up. You're safe now, he said. I called the police. They're on their way. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Paramedics checked me over while police officers led both Derek and Bob away in handcuffs. I gave my statement through tears and shock, barely able to believe that the man I'd loved and trusted had orchestrated my assault. The trial was swift. Both Derek and Bob were found guilty, Derek of conspiracy and Bob of attempted sexual assault. Our divorce was finalized within 6 months. I sold our house and moved back in with my mother, unable to bear living in the space where Derek and I had built our life together. It's been 11 months now, and I'm still learning how to trust again. I still jump at loud noises, still feel my heart race when men approach me too quickly. But I'm healing, slowly but surely. I've started seeing a therapist, and I'm taking classes to get back into graphic design. The security guard who saved me that night was named Marcus. He stopped by during the trial to check on me, and we've become friends. He reminds me that there are still good people in the world, people who will stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. I'll never understand how Derek could have done what he did. The man who used to call me his princess, who promised to love and protect me, had been willing to sacrifice me for a business deal. But I've learned that some betrayals are so deep, so complete, that trying to understand them will only drive you crazy. Instead, I focus on moving forward. I'm stronger now than I was 11 months ago. I survived the worst thing I could imagine, and I'm still here. That has to count for something. Derek got 15 years. Bob got 20. And I got my life back. Sometimes, that feels like justice enough. In case you're still processing what Derek did, you're not alone. Hit that like if this story left you speechless, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe because trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. More jaw-dropping true stories coming your way.